So, Dan, would you like to start?
Sure. Dan Challoner in Chattanooga, Tennessee with the Public Education Foundation.
Please, does somebody jump in?
Kay Atchison, Warfield, Alabama State Department of Education.
Brad Bryant and Georgia, Reach Georgia Scholarship Program.
Dina Dawson with Jefferson County Public Schools in Kentucky.
Laura Davidson, Washoe County School District in Nevada.
Penny Jordan, Partners for Education at Berea College in Kentucky.
Is there anybody else? We've got Alan Richard also, who just joined us as a writer and editor. Charlene is with us.
This is Melissa Bazanos, Riverside County Office of Education, Southern California.
This is Mike Party.
Sylvia Simons with Arizona State University.
Is there anybody who's not introduced themselves?
Chris Mazzio.
Hi, Matthew. And tell us who you're with. Everybody has been doing that just before you joined.
It's Chris Mazzio at Education Northwest. Hi, everyone.
Oh, Chris, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I can still do that, Joanna.
And Bob Balfance, everyone Graduate Center is here.
Okay, well, this is wonderful. We have about twice as many people as we imagined, I believe. So, why don't we just get started? The purpose for today, or our objective, is to go over the documents. You've seen them before, and in the last week or two, we've polished them a little bit. We've done a little wordsmithing here and there, and we wanted to just get your input on them. There's a new one that we'll go into. We realized we were missing a step on analysis, so that will be the one you have not previously seen. And Amanda's with us, and she's got up on the screen all the documents that were also sent to you. So unless there are any questions, we can just get going. Just skim the framework, the introduction to the framework. If you've got any questions, ask them, and if not, we'll go on to the next ones. Bob, did you want to say anything?
I think I thought we were reviewing the documents, Joanna. I don't have a...
Okay.
Paula Kohler.
Hi, Paula.
Hello. Hope everyone is well out there.
We are. We're getting a little bit cold here.
Not here.
Paula, what we're doing is just quick reviewing the documents that we've been polishing. And
okay, fantastic. I have those, and I just finished looking at them.
Good. So is there any comments about things that are missing or need to be added? Words that people are concerned about?
I like the outcomes.
Joanna, I'm not noticing anything. This is Mike from RCOE.
Okay. Anybody else?
Introduction looks good.
Great. I'm glad you like it. Is everybody comfortable if we move on to the adult success outcomes, which is the next page?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. Here we go. Short and sweet. but a lot of work to get there.
Yeah, we definitely wordsmithed at the last face-to-face meeting.
Is there anything anybody thinks is missing?
Kim? Hello.
Hello, this is Matt.
Hi, Matt.
Hello. So how many people have you got on the call?
If the number on my screen is correct, we have 30, which is, but it perhaps is not correct.
What mine says, too.
You guys have about 18. This is Amanda. It's just, it'll replicate for those of you that don't type in your name to go in with your phone number. It'll just double count. So we're actually at about 18 at the moment.
Okay.
Hope that helps.
That's very helpful. We thought we had 7 people, so excited with the turnout.
The question with our adult success outcomes is if we achieve this, have we achieved a successful pathway to young adulthood? And that's
And again, it's like Barney from RCOE, and Joanna, I do like them. Actually, the one word that I like in the second bullet is the employment value. The certificate has an employment value, which I think was a good way of phrasing that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
At one point, we actually had credential instead of certificate. Somebody had suggested that in our last call.
Or we had certificate versus credential, I think, because we have credential now.
Mine says certificate.
Yeah,
Credentials
certificate.
we use credential under the high school thing, what you're preparing for, and we use certificate for what you're achieving under.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Work on that, but that was a good catch.
Yeah. So I think credential, and I think this is Paula, so I think I had pointed out that in our work here in Florida for kids with intellectual disabilities that are in post-secondary education programs, there are all kinds of credentials of with employment value that universities, state colleges, and career tech centers are developing, but they're not necessarily certificates. So credential is broader than certificate.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my argument for.
Yeah, I think certificate connotes a certain meaning of, an official document from some issuer. Credential is much more general. Yeah, agreed.
Yes, and in response to many requests, we added civic participation next to the last bullet.
Right. So could we change that second bullet to professional credential that has employment value?
This is Mike from RCOE. I think certificate, from my perspective, is appropriate because I'm thinking of all the IT people that get different certificates to gain either increase in wage or new employment. So I like certificate. I don't know if we want to put a slash, but
I was saying, yeah, flip it professional credential / certificate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get with.
Yeah, that would be good.
Solution. Anything that we've omitted. Okay. Shall we move on?
Yep.
Okay. Amanda, is the next one coming up?
Yep, it's up there. I think.
Ooh, it's not.
Should be.
Okay, there it is.
Okay.
Take a minute, everybody, and skim through it carefully.
Hi, Dave Calhoun here.
Hi, Dave.
Tina
David.
Svensson here.
Hi, Tina. David's from California. This is the core district now, previously in Fresno Unified, and Tina is in Metro Nashville. And Dave and Tina, we're just reviewing our finished version of the documents. You also sent them, I think, perhaps this morning and Friday, and we're going over them one last time so that we can bring them to the March meeting and go on. We also have one new document you'll see shortly.
Okay, so just, I'm sorry, a little logistics thing. I haven't received anything in the last few days, and so I don't have the documents, and I also had a different call-in number, so that's where Tina and I were on the other call-in number that we got from Charlene maybe a week or two ago.
Okay, I think a more recent one was sent out, but I'm not. We will make sure we have no more glitches, and I'm glad you could join us.
Okay, but I've also not received any documents.
Okay, well, they should be on the screen in front of you. They are our attempt at a final polish for documents we've discussed previously. Can you see the screen?
No, all I have is a call-in number, so I'm calling on my phone.
Dave, I just separate everything. This is Charlene. I just sent you everything. I don't know what the glitch was because you always have been on our list, but I just resent it.
Okay, I'll wait for it. Thank you.
But Amanda, perhaps you can advise on how Dave should access the screen now.
I just sent everything to him.
Okay.
So maybe we should just move on, and Dave, yeah. I can keep sending you emails in case there's another glitch.
That's great, thanks.
Okay, well, you see, we have not made, on the criteria for indicators, we did not make any serious changes, I believe.
I have a couple of suggestions, but I don't know if you really want to wordsmith during this time or not. This is Paula. I would use that first line, indicators to be most effective in propelling interventions and actions. I would say meaningful indicators for student support have certain characteristics, and I don't know, valuable just seems like they have money or something attached to them, but they have to be meaningful in terms of what all the sort of various dimensions of them. In the first one, it's important to youth well-being. So if that's youths in plural, then the apostrophe needs to go after the S. If it's an individual, then we need to just add like the youth's well-being, preparation for progress in school. I'm not sure how that's intended to be written. The other thing back on the next page, the next to the last bullet, indicators may be established at either the individual or school level. I think I would just be more direct. So indicators may be directed or I think established is kind of weird to describe indicators. So it's more may represent either individual level variable, the individual or school level variables. So what we're talking is, what are the indicators, what level on which they are focused.
Which bullet were you on?
It's this next to the last bullet, black bullet on the second page of criteria for indicators.
All right, I marked out established also and put directive.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to come up with. Directed or, yeah.
I'm not sure about directed.
Indicators.
Because the indicators aren't directed. It's what they represent.
Right.
So I can understand sort of the reaction to established. Established worked for me, but I'm not sure about directed.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's the right word.
So you could say it, indicators may represent either individual or school level variables.
Well, that's okay.
Yes, I think.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Yeah, or you could say indicators may be identified at either the individual or the school level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that works.
That also works. And so then it's EG, which should it be comma, but climate and culture. So we're just giving an example of a school level variable. So I don't know if you want to add an example of an individual level variable.
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, but this is sort of a change from like prior early warning practice in general, right? We're making the case that there are maybe situations where you may actually want a school level indicator. So,
I think people's default is individual.
Yeah, no, right. I totally agree. Yeah. I think you do, but just noting for people, this is like one of the big changes. Actually, it's embedded in one of like 12 points, but it's like
the fact that we actually added school level specifically.
Right. Yeah.
No, I definitely.
On the Annenberg Institute's and Chicago's college readiness idea that there are different levels of analysis, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've been doing that at the Dropout Center for years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We use kind of an ecological perspective, so you're working up from the individual to the family or school, and then or the program, then the institution, and then the community. So I totally agree with that approach.
Okay, good. Other comments? Shall we move on then?
Sure.
I did have one comment on the let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth bullet down where it says indicators are reliable. It has been demonstrated that they send accurate signals. I'm wondering if accurate is the right word, and if maybe it should be something more like dependable or predictive. I don't know that any indicator is going to be accurate necessarily. It's just an indicator.
Predictive sounds good. That's in line with an indicator.
Yeah, but I don't think all indicators are predictive. That's the problem.
That's essentially what we're, I think, trying to nail down. Is what is an indicator? What is what are the kind of indicators and the criteria that we want to use, particularly as we move along in asking if we should have more?
I agree, but this one bullet's about reliability, so I agree that within reliability, I think dependable is what you want to use as opposed to predictive, because you're talking about is it reliable.
Right.
So
Yep, that's a good term.
Want to say valid too, or is that pushing it?
That word came to my mind.
Yeah, I like any of those better than accurate.
That was a good catch.
Yeah, I mean, I think accuracy is a good point in that you want something which, to me, is like you're actually it's accurately representing what it is that you're collecting. But I do think it's that's a little bit different context. But certainly to be reliable and to be valid, you should be accurate. You're accurately measuring something. I don't know where we can fit that in, but it's not a bad concept. We don't want to use measures that are going to or inaccurately measure something, but I don't know where else that would go.
I would make an argument for the common man: dependable captures reliable and valid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think dependable is a very nice word there.
Yes.
Okay. I think the last point is something that everybody might want to quickly reflect on, because we're saying that beyond the ABCs, we want to, if we're going to add in additional indicators, we want to make sure that they bring in more students than are identified by the ABCs. Otherwise, if we think the ABCs are 95% what we need, it's a very simple step. And if we're only going to get 2% more, it needs to be worth the effort, and that's something we can discuss. That is essentially the idea.
Yeah, you're trying to define substantially, which would be hard to do.
I like the last sub-bullet of that, with the idea of it helps you identify more kids, and it maybe helps you think about how to help them in a new way. And I think that's a nice sort of point to why you might look beyond the ABCs. But I also like the idea of you always have to do sort of that cost-benefit ratio of, is it worth the extra effort?
Well, I think can you also this as the number 2 bullet, because that's the whole point.
Joanna, can you explain why the difference between the first and the second bullets are there's an or there versus an and? So wouldn't you want both? Well, actually all 3. You want more to be able to identify substantially more youth and identify skills and behaviors that we can't capture from the ABCs and that would lead to new solutions.
I agree.
So the only thing about the or for the second one is this is like scenarios where the kid is signaled by an ABC as in need of certain types of help, and you help them on that. But there was another characteristic they also needed help on that wasn't captured by the ABCs, and because you didn't flag it, you didn't give them help in that also. So that's sort of a little bit where it could be maybe and or, to give people flexible, but that's where a little bit of that, you could maybe have 2 without 1 sometimes.
Yeah, it gives you a little more flexibility, I think, saying more.
I wonder also about the possibility where 2 indicators may be co-affecting or just overlapping quite a bit in terms of their predictive ability to determine the outcome. And if one is in the ABC model and the other is not, the other one may be a really valuable piece. In other words, a behavior, skill, or characteristic that supports success. But because it's not adding weight because of some other indicator that it's highly correlated with, it may not show up. So it may not on its own identify more youth,
but it still may be really important.
Agree. That's why I think the or works.
Mm-hmm. But I'm thinking just as Joanne
slash or and or.
And or, yeah.
Yep.
Oops.
Okay. Shall we move on to action? Here, let's just quick look at action one last time. We've had some very thoughtful comments already, and here we go on actions. And when we had the meeting in November, there was some discussion about there's been a recurrent discussion about whether one should use intervention or response, that they are slightly different. And we therefore, essentially in this first paragraph, are saying we're shifting using the word act so that we don't get caught up in those differences of opinion. And so we also don't get confused with, for instance, response to interventions, RTI, or positive behavior intervention. Just really go on around that. Thoughts or comments?
This is Paula. I'm always willing to jump in. So I'm not sure if the first bullet, so each action is spurred by a valid indicator and analysis. So I guess it might not be like one indicator or one analysis. So is there a better way to say each action is spurred by analysis or results from analysis, or again, you're not going to necessarily look at just one indicator. So it just seems like that's kind of limited. So it's analysis of your data collection. So that was.
Make it all valid indicators.
It is action.
Each action results from analysis of relevant variables.
It doesn't actually define interventions and responses. So if it's encompassing both of them, then even though it's singular with each action, would that not include both of them?
Could you just remove the A and put an S in parentheses after indicator? So it's spurred by a valid indicator and analysis, with it being one or more.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Each action results from analysis of relevant indicators?
No.
I don't hate the term spurred. kind of like it.
Oh, well, then you could spurred is spurred.
But so I don't mind that, but yeah.
Yeah, or spurred by results from analysis of relevant indicators.
I don't think
we already know they have to be valid and all that stuff because we already have their criteria, but we're going to base whatever we're going to do based on the particular ones that are relevant to what we're behavior or academic performance or whatever.
So it could be each action is spurred by or results from analysis of relevant indicators?
Right. And that gets your indicators, plural, in there, as well as your analysis. But it's that you're using the results of that analysis.
Mm-hmm. Other comments? Questions?
So, Joanna, this is Bob. I just have a small one, the very last bullet. I think that where it says actions can be changed if they are not working as intended, that's its own point. And then separately noting that sort of or when intended actions produce unintended consequences. I think those are they're just two separate points to make, not linked.
We can put in the semicolon, delete since, and say intended actions can produce, or sometimes whatever, unintended consequences.
Well, I like the or when that he suggested.
Sorry?
I like the or when he suggested.
To me, they're two separate things. There's going to be plenty of times when you hope something works and it just didn't work. It didn't work well. It wasn't what you thought. Wasn't the right circumstances.
Right.
It wasn't unintended. It just didn't work. And then there's other things where part of it works, but it has negative, other unintended consequences that are offsetting of any gains you might have made.
Right. Like when you suspend kids from school and they miss a lot of learning.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And then you mark them chronically absent and fail them.
Right. Or send their parents to jail. So that or when is kind of provides that caveat. I had one more suggestion on the bullet right before that. So it's the outcomes of the targeted actions can be monitored and measured against progress benchmarks easily and often. Yeah, I don't know about easily. I mean, it'd be nice if all these measures were easy, but I don't think they are. And I don't want to disqualify something because it takes a little bit of effort to collect it. Matt's a good guide on whether or not things are data are collected easily.
We could just say can be monitored and measured against progress benchmarks often or frequently.
Yeah, that works.
Or
just frequently or regularly.
What about systematically? Because every district or every situation may have a different interval of when they measure.
Systematically. I like systematically.
I do too. Other people. Well, perhaps we should move on. We'll send all these revisions around to you, and we'll have them in March. And now we're coming on to root cause analysis and analysis in general.
I'm just going to set this up for a minute, Joanna. So this is a new page. As you folks, as everyone knows, we've been working with this idea of we want to have a tight screen on indicators so that we're only using a few that are very powerful and are strong signals that the student needs attention. But we also recognize that there's other data points, there's other circumstances that help inform what actions we might take, and even to some extent might inform, our how quickly or slowly we act. And we had been playing around with this idea of mediators and enablers, complaints, and people generally like the concept, but we're struggling with the language, and we didn't really want to introduce like lots of new words that school folks would have to learn that had, sort of unique meanings. So what a thought came to us is that what we really, in a way, were missing was the in-between step of an indicator and an action, which is analysis. And some of this was in prior versions of the response page, included some analysis. But we thought if we called out analysis as its own thing, that A, is an important thing in itself, and then B, it does give a home for some of these ideas of mediators and influencers and stuff where they could have a place and not so dependent on creating a new concept for people to understand them, because they just become part of analysis. So that's our prologue, and then we're anxious to see what you think of how it holds up.
And I will say that it's a November meeting. A number of people, I think Tina especially, were really clear that they felt we needed to get to root cause analysis.
Right. We definitely work with our project, our national project, Alvin.
Mm-hmm.
In general, I really like the way all of these have, this is Tina, by the way, all of these have been set out. Of course, if it's at the school level, it's, having done social emotional learning walkthroughs this week, this whole month, I can see some root causes that are probably school specific and not student specific. So the hypotheses can be at either the school or the student level, depending on what, if we're looking at a school level indicator. So the language may just need to change a little bit. So that it can work with both.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Yep.
Yeah, this is Dave. I'm agreeing with that, and I know we've got the last sentence in the first there. Similar process should be applied at the setting school district level, but with a broader perspective. The document still just has a flavor of I'm only looking at a student. That's kind of my unit of intervention. I just wonder if I don't know if we said student/school or something like that, student/school/district, or something that would keep the theme throughout that there are the various levels at which we might be looking at this. The root cause analysis can very much be a systemic thing and not really specific to a student.
I think that's a very good point. We did probably at one point have classroom in there, the segregation that you just suggested, and perhaps we could go back to that. I certainly know that when I work with schools, one of the hard things to sometimes get across in the school is that you do see patterns in the data, and they tell you bigger challenges well beyond the student. Is instruction on a certain point not good?
Juliana, this is Dan in Chattanooga, and I guess that's what you just said is what I'm struggling with a little bit. There does seem to be in all those bullets under the root cause, the issue of whether the adults are effective isn't surfaced.
Addressed. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know how to get that, and I think that's really hard to write. But a student can be failing a course sometimes about how the adults are doing their jobs.
Mm-hmm. is Paula, and I want to add to that because as I was reading the examples again of when we are looking at sort of, appropriate data relevant to indicator and the student, additional data beyond indicators could include, so it's academic assessment, democratic or administrative factors, social and local. So somewhere in there needs, again, to be what he's saying, the adult. So what is the policy response? So if a student is misbehaving or sleeping in class or does something, they're suspended, they're expelled, and that action, zero tolerance stuff that some people are doing, those totally affect student learning and engagement, and negatively. So that's what I'm looking for, is where can those kinds of policy actions fit in there. And I see, when it says when it will be, it's on the last bullet under how best to act given. So it's kind of like, do you need to reorganize the practices or policies? But at the same time, somewhere in there, the policy cause has to be in there.
Right. I think if we just add a bullet, sort of like for about school factor / district policy is what I had. I mean, you can make it bigger than district if you want.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I was just going to agree with that because I think a lot of our problems that we see out here in California is sometimes district policies. And once they get cleaned up, it's amazing how successful students are.
Right. And then I think the other way, a small fix that gets at the plural and not the singular is we can always just talk about, we can do like why, we have to get better language, but students or student and then in parentheses S have an indicator, right? To indicate you could be looking at either an individual students, which could mean a whole school of them, right, or a whole district of them. But it's like, yeah.
Right.
I think what I'm hearing, though, is that many people are perceiving that this document is still too oriented towards this individual student only. And, if you just look at the balance, the number of bullets which discuss students, it far outweighs the larger scale.
That's in the root cause section, and I think the people's feedback is well taken there. I don't know if everyone's had time to read the second page. The second page is much more about multiple levels, actually about trying to push you to higher levels, not an individual student. So I think that it is in the root cause section. We need to rebalance it some. But I would just say my counterbalance there is what we're thinking about. This is like your first. We have a kid as a valid indicator, and now it's our first time getting together to try to figure out why that is. Like that's where this begins in the story, right? So we have multiple or singles or groups of kids that have indicators, and we're now trying to figure out what's going on, right? So that's where we begin. So it's
and I agree. I think the second page does have the balance, and if you look at that second bullet under the first paragraph, you could easily put in there, ask if the student or ask if the school or ask if the district has full access to existing enablers of student success. And then the comment that was made about the policies seems to be at least spoken to in the fourth bullet by consider whether the most effective action is to rethink. So when I read this, what we don't want to miss is that we're looking to a student or a group of students with the indicators, and then the response and how to act could be administered at the student level, the school level, or the district level.
Right. Yeah. And I just said in that fourth bullet, there are the policies are focused. They are definitely mentioned there. Okay. So when that second suggestion the suggestion for the second bullet, ask if the student. So one of the things would be ask if the school / district provides full access to existing enablers to all students or to specific groups. So. that's a very good thing for them to look in the mirror and figure out. I'm going to throw out one other sort of thing.
So I think I like that point, but I also think that in some cases the school may be doing everything it can to provide the full access, and it's the community support around it that is blocking and some of the enablers of student success. So I think, for me, part of what we're looking to do is to try to figure out how you create a climate within both the school and then looking at the overall climate. The social and cultural norms may drop in from the community rather than the school.
And that's the point people have made recurrently in the last 6 months, which is that we mustn't forget the community.
Right, definitely. Having worked many years in Pine Ridge High School in Pine Ridge, South Dakota, you cannot separate the school from the community.
Exactly.
But I do have one item that I wanted to maybe change the language. It's the demographic and administrative factors, second bullet on the first page, second sub-bullet on the first page.
Yeah.
And Melissa actually had a good maybe way of changing it. Our problem is, one of the things to bring up is our problem is that a lot of sometimes blame is put on the language learner because of their language proficiency. And so Melissa had a good phrasing to maybe change it.
And what was your suggestion?
Sorry, my speaker disconnected here. I was just suggesting something along the lines of, is a language proficiency related to academic challenges or achievement challenges, so that it's not a student status, which I know is a demographic issue, but it's more along the lines of not necessarily saying because you're an English language learner, that's why. I guess you can kind of hear, see where I'm coming from, but that's just kind of a different way to phrase it.
Yeah, excellent point. I think. Language proficiency, totally. And that can also have to do with people with speech impairments, not just language differences. I have one other one I want to throw out. This is Paula, and I'm not sure how to do it, but I think it's really important, particularly because of some information I've recently received about students' experiences. And this has to do with, I know we get social emotional observations, chronically absent students feel unconnected at school. That does, I don't think goes deep enough. And then daily human interaction. So there is a lot of sexual harassment, sexual abuse that goes on in our schools. And it's student to student, it's faculty to student, it's family to student, it's people outside the family to student. It happens to boys and girls, and then there's also bullying. So, and sexual harassment and sexual abuse a lot of times comes from bullying. So, and it might be with other students who are working to help feed their families or whatever. So somehow I want to make sure that people ask those questions. And I don't know if when we ask the question, are out-of-school issues or challenges making it hard for the students to succeed in school, or does, feel unconnected? I don't think those questions get at that enough. And I've just, really heard, real recent stories about students who are in so much pain at school, so smart, but yet because they're being sexually abused or by peers, that they don't know who to go to now, and it affects their behavior, and it affects their academic achievement, and affects their willingness to blow their brains out with pot or alcohol. So, or literally blow their brains out.
I think we need a new. I think that's a very good point that we should bring in.
It's almost like we think about, a category, right? That's like more than daily human interaction. That cover that, and also cover, I guess.
Yeah,
probably.
Well, so we have traumas, though, spelled out in understanding what's going on with the student. And so, while I guess we could make what type of trauma more explicit, I'm not sure we need to fully define all types of trauma.
Right.
Yeah. But I see that as being something that, you would want someone to be well trained in how to address it. But I think when we talk about dealing with traumatized students, and whether I think it falls under that bucket.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not just trained to deal with it; it's trained to find out about it.
Right.
Yeah, that's part of dealing with it is being able to talk
doing
to
a root cause
about it.
analysis. That's one place to look.
Right. Okay. So we can create some examples.
So where do we talk about trauma?
It was under the best to act given the diagnosis.
But I'm saying I think here in this, like, in our categories of root cause analysis, we could just create like a trauma.
Right.
And
pretty
give
trauma.
Like exposure to violence, sexual harassment, abuse, all people.
Right. And bullying. Yeah. No, I think that was. I think it rises to that level that we need it.
Are there other things you think?
So I think, is that changing then the daily human interaction to be sort of about the additional things about the student? Never mind.
Well, it could be with questions like, is the student experiencing trauma associated with blah, 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 blah. Give several of those.
I guess what I was trying to get at with that one, the daily human interaction, you talk to a lot of kids, middle and high school, right? They talk about the drama.
Right.
And that's not super serious stuff. At the trauma level. But it is some degree of bullying and teasing and peer relation and yelled at by your teachers. I mean, it's like that number of kids is what keeps them out of school. Like, it's not. Well, I was trying to differentiate that sometimes it's very serious. Sometimes it's more about like that daily human interaction piece that like it's easier to correct than the.
Well, I agree, and just in recent conversations, because every time I see my 12-year-old niece, great niece, I ask her what drama's happening right now, and she tells me. And then again, it's somebody looked at somebody's boyfriend. It's on social media. You're embarrassed. Everybody that was your friend last week is attacking you this week. Some people can brush it off, and others absolutely it's devastating to them.
Right.
So I was thinking of drama as I was reading the way it exists now, and then thinking that trauma is the next level that's missing. The trauma of those other things.
What do you think about the convene a team bullet? I'm curious. Bottom of page 1.
I think if we take this, why does a student have an indicator, and you have this for the individual student, but you broaden it out to talk about sort of groups of students, and then you can think about convening a team, because I think what's important for folks is to think about how systematically to embed this type of work within their school or district. It's not sort of a ad hoc, we're doing it just for this kid, or at least that maybe isn't necessarily as helpful. But I like this, but I think it could sort of grow and help people think about there might be something existing in your school that can take on this type of work, sort of build off a foundation and not necessarily start from scratch. But I think that's sort of an opportunity to have the framework of how you do this for groups of students as well.
Like RTI.
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
I wonder too, this is Dave, about there's something it feels a little bit missing in the why section here around like we've already talked about, around the student group piece. And I'm just wondering about something about doing some kind of a systems analysis as something to add. And of course that would be important to do as you're bringing in people and convening in teams. So not just like a student study group to talk about a particular student and what could be done, but how are what are the whys that go into why our system is the way it is, and a root cause analysis is one tool that you could do when you're doing a causal system analysis, but there's some broader pieces there too, doing process mapping or creating a system map for just mapping out, what is our system that we have here. There may be some possibility to broaden that in that way a little bit.
Yeah, I do see that as like the RTI comparison that sort of works, because it's going to depend on, so your typical broad look at things, and then as you work with specific students, moving into a more in-depth approach. But that needs to be all laid out, that this is what we do when we have a student, or we analyze our data, and so we collect all these data and we're continuously analyzing them, and then we see the things that jump out of us, and then we then do more in-depth analysis, and that's where we add additional indicators, and then we so it's again that sort of going deeper and deeper in terms of what's the issue and what's the response. But the fact that happens needs to be within the systematized, so to speak.
So essentially, one of the recurrent themes in these conversations are broaden the focus from the student. Look at things as a system and really consider that balance throughout this, and more carefully define the different types of systems. I mean, a classroom is a system, essentially. So is a grade. And we know there are many challenges that are associated with those different levels.
I think if you asked a question about the team, so I guess, what we're saying here on this first page is, so number one, why does the student have an indicator? And then we're trying to get at that, so, conduct a root cause analysis and kind of develop a hypothesis of what we think that is based on the data. And part of that is that data analysis that we've outlined under those sort of bullets. And then the next step is have a conversation with the student, and the next is convene a team. So I guess if you were going to say convene a team, it wouldn't be, why you would typically root cause analysis to stronger, more people, insight, blah, 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 if it doesn't become unwieldy. So I think just changing what you say about convene a team in this bullet might be helpful. So, who would be on the team? What would the team look at? So, of course, you want to keep it unwieldy and not time-consuming, but rather than just saying sometimes it becomes better when more people are involved, that doesn't really, I don't think that provides too much guidance to folks, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. And essentially, I think the point is it's not just the convening of the team, but is it taking that approach that more ideas are better than few ideas, or more perspectives, right, perhaps is the way to put it.
So then you could say, who might be on that team that because of those different perspectives that they can bring to that.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I don't really know why you would just say, well, it could be better if more people are involved.
Yeah, well, I think we thank you. I think we have run over our time.
So easy to do.
This has been a vigorous and wonderful discussion, and we greatly appreciate all the comments, and we will weave them in and keep on sharpening and polishing this document.
Done a good job.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I see progress from November.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, this is
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you in March.